Hi there, in this video I am going to show you how to start a new project and then how to import your DWG. So you'll be importing a DWG with the goal to being able to trace over the top of it. So to get this working optimally, especially if I work with your drafting team or design team, and work on the translators that you will need from ArchiCAD or Revit to produce a DWG that have the layers for you or classes for you ready to go. If need be, we can set up the discussion with your design drafting teams. Okay, now to start a new project, it's Truth Engine, new project, new. And if all is working well, you'll be able to see the tescheduling.sta template available. You may have other standard ones installed that come with Vectorworks, but this is the one we want to use, tescheduling.sta, and go OK. And there's the template. So you can see all these views have popped up, so it looks pretty good. Looks like we're ready to go. So the next thing is, if you follow these tools, do a save as. We'll call this training 2. And there's our new job. Okay, now I'm going to import a DWG. So same process, Truth Engine, new project, import single DXF for DWG. And as I mentioned before, your drafting team should provide you a DWG that have the layers / classes pretty close to what we need. Okay, so I'm going to bring in this DWG file here and go open. Now you'll be prompted with this import options dialog box. The first time you use it, just go to advanced, center first import. That's a pretty good way to go. But the important one is go to conversion and make sure that it is set to this scale, which is 1:1. And click OK. Shouldn't take too long. As you can see, it's got quite a few objects to convert. And there we go. You can see that looks pretty good. So what it's actually done is, say for example, it's imported these entities onto a class that we need. So you can see, for example, these walls have come into our inbuilt class called DWG import dash wall inside the template. And that means we can start using that straight away. So, but the one thing you need to do first up is go all on. See that view there. Now you see how that has turned off that layer. Because our current layer is now a TE, which is standard Truth Engine layer. When we import a DWG, it creates its own layer and inserts those entities onto that layer. So if I drop this down, you see it's created that layer, WD, and that is basically the name of the file. So if we click on that layer, you find that everything will come back. And you see now there's actually more entities available as well. If we click some of these, you can see what class and layer they're on. So you can see that's on the layer that came from ArchiCAD, and it gets translated to this class. One thing I will note is as I mentioned in previous videos, when you think of a class, that's the equivalent of a layer in any other CAD program. A layer in Vectorworks is more like a sheet. You have your sheet layers and design layers. You can think of them as separate stories or different sheets, but it's got its collection of classes that go with it. There's sort of two ways of controlling what's visible. Okay, so what we need to do is make sure that layer is turned on, is the current layer, and then press Control A. And we're going to move everything from the WD layer onto the DWG layer. So our DWG entities that come in that we're going to trace off going to the DWG, anything that we draw or model will be going on to the TE layer. So this needs to be moved to the DWG layer. And what that means is if we now start to use these views, you can see that everything's on the correct layer or class that we need, and it's ready to go. It's always a good idea to test these three views in particular, just to make sure it's imported correctly. And it's always a good idea to move your drawings or drawing into the middle of this page for our reports or PDFs, which we might implement later on. So if we go all on, and everything back on, and then Control A, we're on the wrong layer, so we'll move to the DWG layer, so that's the active layer, and then go Control A, and just pick up the middle of the house and approximately drop it into the middle of that page. Check our views again, and there we go. Here's a drawing in the middle of the page. That's pretty good. Okay, now if we do look at the classes that have come in, you'll see that generally what you need will be moved automatically on to the DWG import section. So you can see these are the classes we need to view our trace, but there will always be the case where a class doesn't get translated correctly. A drafter can create any sort of layer they need back in ArcGIS or out, but we need to handle it if we need it. Say for example, this drawing here, it doesn't have the feature one course face pier at the front, and it doesn't have the contrasting render pier here or the post at the back. So what we do is we identify what layer that is on, and again we do that by using all on. Probably the best way to go is we'll zoom into, quite hard to see, but there's our pier there. So if you select that pier, of course you have to go to the DWG layer. And you see that's on the class called D4 wall site. So what we're going to do is move every entity on that class to a class, to a bin-built truth engine class or DWG import class called external walls. So to do that, what we do is we find the class in our class list. That's how we get to it. That's part of the navigation tools for classes and other save views. So we jump over to classes, and there's D4 wall site. So the best way to do this is to actually delete that class, and it will be asked to move those entities to another class. So if I go right mouse and delete, I'm now going to move all of those entities to the class called DWG Brickwork. And okay. Now if we go to our views, so that's found our pier that we need, our feature one course face pier, and we should have our posts. One more class that we need by looking at it is the beams. See, we don't have the actual beams, so we'll look at our class list. There should be a class called beam somewhere. My1 beams. So we'll delete that, put that onto our DWG-beams class. And we'll just test our view again, make sure that was correct. And there we go, there's our beams. So as you can see, you could actually bring in any DWG and use that process to map those entities onto the classes that we need to use. But obviously, if your translator is set up in ArchiCAD and Revit correctly, it'll save you a lot of time. And in theory, you're able to import your drawing, move it onto the DWG layer, and you can start tracing straight away. Okay, so that's now actually finished. We have our trace ready to go. One last step that we need to do before we start tracing is set our story height. So to do that, we have what's called a story height recorded against the layer. So against our TE layer, we have a story height. So to get to that screen, we go show, click on that icon next to your layer drop down, then you go show organizational dialog box. And you can see there's our wall height there for our story. So this job is actually a 28 course ceiling, so we don't need to change it. If you had a 30 course ceiling, you would change it to 2572. If it was a 31 course ceiling, it would be 2657. Okay, but the majority of the house needs to be set to that wall height. And if you had a two-story job, then you would have which we covered in another video, there will be another layer called TE first floor, and then that will have its own wall height. But there's a single story job, so that's all we need. Yeah, so we go okay. And that is it. That trace is ready to go, and that's the end of the video. In the next video, we'll start modeling up. See you there.